Listen carefully. Your life will not change until your anger becomes stronger than your excuses. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they're comfortable being average. They complain, they hope, they wish, but they never decide. Today, you make a decision. Get angry. Get disciplined. Get rich. Or stay broke and watch someone else live the life you wanted. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. Most people never understand this truth, and that's exactly why their lives stay stuck in cycles of frustration, regret, and wasted potential. They think discipline is restriction, something that limits them, something that takes away their fun and comfort. But in reality, discipline is the one thing that unlocks every door they're trying to walk through. It's the real path to power, clarity, and a life where you're in control, not your impulses, not your fears, not your mood swings. When you lack discipline, your emotions own you. You wake up when you feel like it. You work when you're motivated. You chase goals only when they're convenient. But feelings change every minute. Discipline doesn't. Emotions are unpredictable, unstable, and easily manipulated. Discipline is stable, trustworthy, and unwavering. A disciplined person decides who they will be, and then their actions follow that identity. An undisciplined person wakes up every day as a different version of themselves, never consistent long enough for anything great to take root. Freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. That's chaos disguised as liberation. True freedom comes from having the strength to do what needs to be done, especially when you don't want to do it. When you master discipline, you're no longer controlled by laziness, cravings, procrastination, or momentary comfort. You become the one steering the wheel. It's the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. A disciplined mind creates a disciplined life, and a disciplined life produces predictable success. People who live without discipline don't realize how much they've surrendered. They surrender their health because they can't resist bad habits. They surrender their time because they can't control distractions. They surrender opportunities because they can't stay consistent. And eventually, they surrender their dreams slowly, quietly, painfully, because they never built the habits that could carry them there. They think discipline is hard. But what's harder? Waking up early, saying no to comfort, or spending the rest of your life wishing you had done more. Discipline is the great equalizer. You don't have to be born gifted, wealthy, or lucky. You don't need special connections or perfect timing. Discipline alone can turn average people into extraordinary successes. It builds momentum. It compounds over time. If you work a little bit every single day without skipping, without negotiating, without excuses, the results start stacking up in ways you can't even imagine at the beginning. People will call you lucky, but you'll know the truth. It was discipline, not chance, that built your life. There is a certain self-respect that only comes from discipline. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, your confidence rises, not because someone praised you, not because you got validation, but because you proved through action that you can trust yourself. And that is one of the most powerful feelings in the world. Confidence rooted in discipline is unshakable because it's earned, not given. Discipline also protects you from the emotional storms that ruin most people. When life hits them, stress, pressure, disappointment, they collapse because they were never mentally fortified. But when you live a disciplined life, you develop mental armor. You learn to act based on your standards, not your feelings. You learn to be calm when things get hard. You learn to keep going when things fall apart. A disciplined mind is harder to break, harder to manipulate, and harder to defeat. And here's the truth most people don't want to accept. Your emotions will constantly try to sabotage your progress. Your mind will whisper, rest a little longer. It will tempt you with comfort. It will convince you to delay, postpone, or give up. That voice is always there, and it always sounds reasonable. But discipline builds a stronger voice, the voice that says, do it anyway. That voice is your real ally. It is the voice of your future self guiding you toward the life you actually want, not the life your emotions are dragging you into. Without discipline, you will be trapped forever in the prison of your moods. One bad day ruins your progress. One moment of discomfort derails your plans. One wave of emotion can erase months of effort. But with discipline, you become unshakable. You create momentum that emotions cannot break. You build habits that carry you forward even on your worst days. Most importantly, Discipline gives you freedom, the freedom to build wealth, the freedom to be healthy, the freedom to create opportunities, the freedom to live a life you're proud of. It frees you from regret, from guilt, from wishing you started sooner. It frees you from being controlled by cravings, temptations, and weakness. It frees you from the chaos of an undisciplined life. The more disciplined you become, the more power you gain over your circumstances. The more power you gain, the more freedom you experience. So yes, discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, your emotions become your masters, and they will drive you to stagnation, mediocrity, and disappointment. But with discipline, you take back control. You choose your direction. You shape your destiny. You build a life that reflects your potential, not your impulses. And the greatest truth of all is this: discipline is a choice renewed every day. Not a gift, not luck, a choice. The moment you choose discipline, you unlock a level of freedom that most people will never experience because they never had the strength to choose it. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. This truth sounds simple, but it cuts deeper than most people ever realize. Every decision you make, every habit you follow, every result you get in life is determined by whether you control your emotions or your emotions control you. People think freedom means doing whatever they feel like, whenever they want. But that kind of freedom is an illusion because feelings are inconsistent. They come and go like weather. If your entire life is built on emotional impulses, then you are never truly in control. You're drifting, you're reacting, you're trapped. Discipline is what anchors you. It creates structure in a life that would otherwise be chaotic. It turns long-term goals into achievable plans. It transforms dreams into realities through consistent action. When you live with discipline, you live with intention. You're no longer waking up hoping to feel inspired. You're waking up committed. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't depend on motivation. You operate from standards, not moods. Emotions, by nature, are selfish. They want comfort now, even if it destroys you later. Your emotions will tell you to sleep in when you need to get up. They'll tell you to take shortcuts when you need to work harder. They'll tell you to quit when things get difficult. Everyone feels these temptations. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to rise above it. Discipline is the tool that allows you to override the emotional impulses that sabotage your potential. Living without discipline looks like freedom in the beginning. You get to relax, procrastinate, avoid discomfort. But over time, it becomes a prison. You fall behind. You lose opportunities. You gain regrets. You watch others progress while you remain stuck. Your life becomes predictable in the worst way. You settle, you lower your standards. You accept less than you're capable of. That is the real cost of being controlled by emotion. True freedom is the opposite. It comes from mastering yourself to the point where your actions are aligned with your goals, not your impulses. When you choose discipline, you create freedom in every area of your life. Financial freedom comes from disciplined saving, investing, and working. Physical freedom comes from disciplined health, exercise, and nutrition. Emotional freedom comes from disciplined thinking, reflection, and self-control. Freedom isn't given, it's earned, and the currency is discipline. One of the greatest benefits of discipline is that it builds consistency, and consistency creates results that emotions alone can never achieve. Anyone can work hard for one day. Anyone can be inspired for a week, but discipline turns that effort into a lifestyle. It removes the randomness from your progress. Each day becomes a small step forward, even when the progress feels slow, and over time, those small steps become unbreakable momentum. What people don't understand is that discipline actually makes life easier, not harder, easier. When you lack discipline, life is full of stress because you're always behind. You're always rushing, always regretting, always dealing with the consequences of inaction. But when you practice discipline, you eliminate that stress. You become reliable. You become focused. You become someone who doesn't panic under pressure because you've trained yourself to follow through no matter what. Discipline also builds identity. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who can be trusted to do what needs to be done. That inner trust becomes confidence, and that confidence becomes power. When you know you can rely on yourself, you don't need external validation. You don't crumble under criticism. You don't fear challenges. You become mentally strong, emotionally stable, and incredibly resilient. And resilience is one of the greatest forms of freedom. When challenges come, and they always do, an undisciplined person breaks down because they have no structure to hold them up. A disciplined person endures, adapts, and continues. They don't run from difficulty. They rise above it. They don't panic. They execute. They stay grounded because they've built a foundation that emotions cannot shake. Another truth that many ignore: discipline creates clarity. It removes confusion from your life because it forces you to prioritize what truly matters. People without discipline chase everything and accomplish nothing. Their minds are cluttered. Their lives are scattered. But discipline sharpens your focus. It strips away distractions. It makes your goals clear and your path direct. Most importantly, discipline gives you control over your destiny. You're no longer pulled around by temptation, laziness, excuses, or emotional highs and lows. You become the architect of your life, not a passenger. You choose the direction, you create the habits, you build the future. Without discipline, you will always be controlled by moods, urges, desires, and fears. And that is not freedom. That is slavery disguised as comfort. But with discipline, you command your emotions instead of obeying them. You decide your actions instead of reacting to feelings. You become stronger, more focused, and more capable than you ever imagined. Discipline cuts the chains of emotional slavery and replaces them with the wings of personal power. It is the door to every form of freedom you've ever wanted, and the key has always been in your hands. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. This is a truth that most people never confront, because facing it means admitting that almost every struggle in their life originates from a lack of control over themselves. Emotions are powerful, but they are also unstable, unpredictable, and often irrational. When you allow them to guide your decisions, your life becomes chaotic. One day you're productive, the next you're lazy. One moment you're confident, the next you're insecure. One week you're motivated, the next you're completely stuck. This inconsistency destroys progress, and without discipline, you can never escape that cycle. Discipline is what transforms emotion into direction. It gives structure to your thoughts, purpose to your energy, and order to your actions. When you lack discipline, you may feel momentary satisfaction, but it never lasts. You'll chase comfort, but comfort eventually becomes confinement. People often confuse freedom with the absence of rules, but in reality, that only leads to being controlled by your impulses. True freedom is the ability to act independently of your emotions, to rise above them rather than bow to them. When you choose discipline, you are choosing to live according to principles instead of feelings. You're choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. You're choosing growth over comfort. A disciplined person does not need to feel like it to take action. They don't wait for motivation because they understand that motivation is temporary, but discipline is permanent. Discipline remains steady even when everything else is unstable. It becomes a compass that keeps you aligned with your goals, even when your emotions try to pull you off course. The people who achieve the most in life are not the ones who feel the strongest emotions. They're the ones who master them. They wake up early even when they're tired. They work on their craft even when inspiration is missing. They push forward even when fear, doubt, or boredom tries to slow them down. They understand that emotions are natural, but they don't let emotions make decisions for them. They make decisions based on commitment, not comfort. Without discipline, emotions control your behavior in ways you don't even notice. You skip responsibilities because you don't feel like it. You procrastinate because a task feels overwhelming. You indulge in bad habits because they feel good in the moment. And slowly, silently, these small emotional choices compound into major consequences. You lose opportunities. You weaken your confidence. You damage your health. You undermine your dreams. Life becomes a pattern of starts and stops, excitement followed by regret, intention followed by abandonment. Discipline breaks that pattern. It creates consistency, and consistency builds momentum. When you stay disciplined long enough, your habits take over and your emotions lose their power to derail you. The things that once felt difficult become normal. The tasks you used to avoid become automatic. Discipline reshapes your identity because the more actions you take out of discipline, the more you start to see yourself as someone capable. reliable, and strong. This identity shift is part of the freedom discipline brings. When you trust yourself to follow through, you no longer fear challenges the way you once did. You know that, regardless of how you feel, you can depend on yourself to take action. This creates a deep sense of internal confidence that no external influence can shake. It also frees you from the emotional chaos that controls so many people. Instead of being thrown around by stress, frustration, anger, or sadness, you learn to remain calm and focused. Discipline becomes your emotional anchor, keeping you steady even in turbulent times. Another form of freedom discipline gives you is time. When you live emotionally, time slips away from you. You lose hours, days, and even years to distractions, laziness, and indecision. But disciplined people take command of their time. They prioritize what matters. They eliminate what doesn't. They build routines that support their goals. This control over time is one of the greatest freedoms you can give yourself, because time is the most valuable resource you have and the one most easily wasted when emotions run your life. Financial freedom is also rooted in discipline. Wealth does not come from sporadic effort or emotional spending. It comes from consistent action, delayed gratification, and smart decision making. People stay broke because they let emotions dictate their financial choices, shopping for comfort, avoiding work when they're tired, chasing instant rewards instead of long-term gain. Discipline reverses this. It teaches you to invest instead of waste, to build instead of consume, to plan instead of hope. Physical freedom, being strong, healthy, energetic, also depends entirely on discipline. Your body reflects your habits, not your desires. No emotion will build muscle, burn fat, or improve your health. Only consistency will. The freedom of a strong body comes from the discipline of training it. In the end, everything you want, success, confidence, wealth, health, respect, fulfillment, comes from discipline. And everything that holds you back, fear, laziness, procrastination, insecurity, comes from emotional control. If you do not master discipline, your emotions will continue to dictate your life, and they will lead you to mediocrity. But if you choose discipline, you gain freedom on every level: mental, physical, emotional, financial, and personal. Discipline is not punishment. It is liberation. It is the path out of chaos and into control. Without it, you will always be ruled by your feelings. With it, you become unstoppable. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Without it, you'll forever be a slave to your emotions. This truth is uncomfortable for many people because it exposes a reality they've tried to ignore. Most of their problems come from the inability to control what they feel in the moment. Emotions are powerful, but they're temporary. They spike, they fade, they shift without warning. If your actions depend on your emotions, then your life becomes a roller coaster, unpredictable, inconsistent, and exhausting. You can't build success on something that changes every hour. Discipline is what brings stability. It creates a foundation strong enough to carry dreams, goals, and responsibilities. When you live without discipline, you're basically giving your emotions full authority over your life. Think about what that actually means. Your laziness decides your future. Your stress dictates your behavior. Your cravings shape your habits. Your fear controls your ambition. Your mood determines your productivity. And your excuses become your reality. It's a silent form of slavery, chains that don't appear physical, but bind you mentally and emotionally. Freedom comes when you take that control back. Freedom isn't doing whatever feels good. That's just indulgence. True freedom is being able to do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. A free person wakes up and chooses action over emotion. A free person chooses consistency over comfort. A free person chooses long-term reward over temporary pleasure. That freedom is earned through discipline, through the ability to command your own mind instead of being pushed around by it. Discipline also creates a psychological shift where you stop relying on motivation. Because motivation is unreliable. It shows up when life is easy and disappears the second things get hard. But discipline stays. It doesn't care if you're tired, stressed, annoyed, or emotionally drained. It carries you through the days when your emotions would normally sabotage your progress. In this way, discipline becomes a tool of protection. It shields your goals from your weaker impulses. It shields your progress from your lack of consistency. It shields your identity from collapsing when emotions fluctuate. Without discipline, your emotions will always manipulate you. They will convince you to delay your goals. They will persuade you to avoid discomfort. They will encourage you to settle for less. And with every time you listen to these emotional impulses, your discipline weakens. Your self-trust erodes. You begin to doubt your ability to follow through. And eventually, you convince yourself that success just isn't meant for you, when the truth is that you simply never learn to command your emotional reactions. Discipline, however, builds your identity. Each disciplined action is a vote for the person you want to become. Each time you follow through, even when you don't feel like it, you reinforce your strength. You prove to yourself that you can be counted on. You build integrity with yourself. And that internal integrity becomes confidence, real confidence, not the shallow kind that depends on praise or validation. Real confidence comes from knowing you can rely on your own actions, regardless of your emotional state. There's also an emotional freedom that discipline unlocks. People who lack discipline tend to feel overwhelmed because their emotions control them. They get stressed easily, frustrated quickly, and discouraged often. But disciplined individuals have a calmness to them, not because they lack emotion, but because they're not ruled by emotion. They can feel fear, but still move forward. They can feel doubt, but still act. They can feel anger, sadness, or discomfort, and yet remain committed. Emotions become something they manage, not something they obey. This level of inner control creates an extraordinary sense of freedom. You're no longer living at the mercy of your moods. You're no longer derailed by setbacks. You're no longer limited by the emotional reactions that used to stop you. Instead, discipline helps you respond to life from a place of intention rather than impulse. You choose your actions based on your vision, not your momentary feelings. Time also becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Undisciplined people constantly feel rushed, behind, or unprepared because they keep allowing emotions to interfere with their responsibilities. But disciplined people manage their time well because they manage their emotions well. They don't waste hours scrolling, delaying, or overthinking. They take action. And in return, they earn more time. Time for opportunity, time for growth, time for mastery, freedom in finances, health, relationships, and mindset all come from the same root: the ability to stay consistent despite emotional turbulence. People fail not because they're incapable, but because their emotions are too loud and their discipline is too weak. They know what they should do, but they let feelings decide, and feelings rarely choose wisely. Discipline lets you rise above that internal noise. It gives you the power to do what everyone else avoids. It makes you unstoppable in a world full of people who quit the moment their emotions shift. It separates you from mediocrity and puts you on the path toward everything you desire. In the end, discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect. It's choosing what is right over what is easy. It's choosing progress over comfort. It's choosing control over chaos. Without it, emotions will rule your life. With it, you master yourself, and once you master yourself, you become truly free. In the end, everything comes down to one simple truth. Your emotions were never meant to be your master. They were meant to be signals, not commands. If you let them control you, your life will always be unstable, inconsistent, and filled with regret. But if you choose discipline, you reclaim your power. You break the cycle that keeps you stuck. You rise above the impulses that limit you. Discipline is not just a habit. It's a declaration that you refuse to be controlled by weakness, fear, laziness, or doubt. The moment you choose discipline, you choose a future shaped by intention instead of emotion. You choose growth over comfort, purpose over impulse, and progress over excuses. This is the path that leads to real freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you feel, but the freedom to build a life you're proud of. A life where you're in control. A life where your actions match your goals. A life where your potential finally becomes your reality. So stand firm. Decide who you want to become. Make discipline your daily companion, because once you master yourself, nothing, no emotion, no setback, no circumstance can ever truly stop you again.